What's going on, guys? I'm currently in Austin right now, but I wanted to get this quick video out for y'all. I'm going to be breaking down a chart on my computer to help you work smarter so you don't have to work harder. In the chart, I'm going to be breaking down what you should do on the first day of your fitness journey, what you should do within the first few weeks, and then the first few months. That way you have clarification on if the plan is working, if you're making progress, or if you should change things. If you're new here, welcome to my channel. I'm going to go ahead and send you over my computer now so that you can make more progress. All right, guys, what is going on? This is just going to be a quick little presentation today where I'm going to discuss metrics and tracking points to be able to tell if your plan is working, if you're progressing on your journey, so that you can have some assurances, so that you can stay consistent and disciplined. I've noticed that with my clients and with myself that the number one reason why consistency and discipline dwindles is because we're just not sure if we're doing the right thing. It's easy to show up when we have someone telling us, okay, here is the plan, but when we're doing it for ourselves, we kind of need a way to be like, let's test this. Like, is this working? Am I progressing? Am I meeting all the marks I'm supposed to be meeting? So in this video, I'm going to kind of break that down for you and essentially give you this little chart right here that you can apply to the current things that you're trying or doing to tell if it's benefiting you and if it's actually going to yield some progress if you stay consistent with it for a longer period of time. All right, so without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this progress measurement protocol. Broke this into like a timeline of like day one, then the first few weeks, then the first few months. All right, so on the first day of when you decided that you're going to implement a change, you need to build a system. And I know what I'm saying. You're like, Megan, this is fucking obvious. Obviously, we need to build a plan. You know how many people don't? I didn't. I did not build a plan when I started. I just hoped. I was like, okay, I'm just going to start going to the gym and then take all these supplements that I see on TikTok or Instagram, and then I'm just going to be fine. I didn't even have a plan. I didn't even write down my workouts. I didn't even write down my cardio. I didn't even have anything written down as to how this transformation was going to occur. I was like, oh, if I just show up to the gym and then start doing random things and just move and make sure I'm sweating, everything will work out fine. And that is not the case. So you need to actually have a system in place. Now, this doesn't have to be the most detailed, knowledgeable system, especially if you're a beginner. Like, just accept that you probably don't know all the tips, tricks, and systems to have set in place to get like a completely transformative result, but it needs to be some sort of systematic procedure. You can't just be like, oh, I'm hoping and wishing. So you need to build a system for both what you're going to eat and how you're going to train yourself mentally and physically. And I say mentally and physically because you guys know I'm a coach who focuses on transforming your mental to then see the physical results. Where your mind leads, your body will follow. If your mind is in a shitty place, it can't handle shit, and you have a terrible perspective, your body is going to be a reflection of that. And so on day one, you are going to work on building a system with nutrition and then building a system with training, both mental and physical. So with nutrition, this depends on what level you're at. Maybe right now you're a beginner and you're focusing on your portion sizes, just so you can start to understand what you're eating. Now, if you're someone who has a little bit more experience with their nutrition and they've been experimenting and trying things, you're probably going to have to put yourself in a calorie deficit unless you are underweight. So you're trying to build muscle and gain weight. But if you're skinny fat or you're overweight, you're going to be in a caloric deficit. And then you can begin to manipulate your macronutrients. And if you're a little more advanced than that, you can carb cycle and you can nutrient partition and you can time your meals. The most important thing when it comes to building this system is that it has some sort of structure. Now, like I just said, it can be very, very detailed, or it can be bare bones. You're just paying attention to what you eat. But over time, it will evolve as you do. And if you're struggling with anything regarding nutrition, there's a ton of videos on my YouTube channel where I discuss all these different kinds of things. And then next, you need to build a system to train your mental and physical strength. Now, notice how I'm emphasizing the mental strength. Doing things to train your mental strength can also coincide with training your physical strength or helping with cardio or helping with fat loss. But the main priority of that specific task is for the mental fortitude, right? So for example, for me, recently I've been doing a mile every day to help with the mental training, to force myself to do something, even if it's 11 p.m. at night, even if it's 6 a.m. in the morning, even if it's the last thing I want to do, even if I don't have time for it, because it's something that I can do to show myself I'm going to show up regardless, and it doesn't take 5 hours out of my day. Now, is running a mile or running in general the most optimal version of cardio for fat loss? No, but the optimal lens we're looking through here is mental training. We're not trying to pick the best form of cardio for fat loss. We're not trying to pick the best form of cardio to minimize fatigue. All we're trying to do here is choose a task that challenges us mentally. And the reason that I chose the mile is because there was a point in time in my life where I hated running. And I've made a video about this before, but that is why I run instead of walking on the treadmill, instead of doing the stair step, or instead of doing the row machine or whatever. It's because running is my least favorite form. And it just trains my brain to see something that it doesn't like to do and then do it. And so therefore, in my mind, like, I could literally hate doing something. I could literally not want to do it at all. And I'm still going to do it because it's what I told myself I would do. And so that's what you have to look at when you're planning how you're going to train your mentality. Now, while it may be different for you, it might not be running a mile for you. You might like to run. It might be something else that you absolutely avoid at all costs. The principle is still the same. It is training your brain to do the things that you avoid because you know it's for the betterment of yourself. And then when it comes to building a system for your physical training, now we can look at it through the lens of what is most optimal. Now, this is going to be your training split. So when you're resistance training or lifting in the gym, you need to have a system set in place, because if you don't track your lifts, if you don't track your weight, it can be a lot harder to make progress versus you show up every day, you do the same set of exercises, you do 1 extra rep or you go 5 extra pounds, and you can almost guarantee muscular growth is occurring because you're keeping track of every little thing that's going on. Versus when you don't have a plan, and then one day you show up to do biceps and you start off with barbell curls, then you do hammer curls, then you do preacher curls, and then you go do cable curls, and then the next day you show up and then you do cable curls first, and then you go to the preacher, and then you're bouncing around, and you have no idea if the weights have increased, if the weights have decreased. You have no idea if the movement's harder because it's at the end versus last time it was at the beginning. You have no fucking clue because you're not tracking anything. And like I said, these things don't have to be down to the very last fucking detail, but you do need to have a general scope. You have to have your finger on the pulse to some degree if you want to see a change. You can't just like half-ass or like shoot from the hip, because if you do so, those are the results that are going to get reflected. Like, you're going to get half-ass or, shitty results. Okay, so now that we've understood that we need to build a system, I want to clarify a few things for you, because this is where I notice a lot of people get frustrated, a lot of people give up, and ultimately is the reason why a lot of people just don't make it past like week 2. And that's because people are looking at the wrong things. Now you can see here, I have the first few weeks. Now, in the first few weeks, yeah, you might lose a couple pounds, but you're not going to be at your dream physique, and there likely won't be a lot of visible changes in the mirror. You might see a little bit more definition. Your waist will probably decrease in size just due to a reduction in inflammation and bloating. But for the most part, you won't see crazy changes. And a lot of people are looking for crazy visible and physical changes, when in reality, those come later, okay? Because they're lagging indicators. In order to get those physical things to change, you'd have had to have been consistent for a longer period of time without seeing any results, and not many people can stick to that. So in the first few weeks, I want you to shift your perspective and what you're looking at from the visible changes to your mentality changes and how you feel. Okay, so when you're in the first few weeks and you're implementing the mental, the physical training, and the nutrition, how do you know if you're progressing, right? What is it that I actually want you to look at? So in the first 4 weeks, right, you've been to the gym, you showed up every single time, 5 days out of the week, you didn't miss a single training session. That is a win. Did your physique change all that much? Not really. Do you look like a ripped pro bodybuilder? Not really. But if you continue to do that, you will. And so reinforce that mental win right there and that process-based goal, because that will then lead to the outcome-based goals that you're looking for. So at the beginning of this journey, do not look for crazy changes in the mirror or even crazy changes on the scale. What you need to look for and be proud of is that you consistently showed up to the gym 5 times out of the week, if that's what you set for yourself. Or even if you just made the attempt to go to the gym when you've never done that before. At the beginning, you have to keep track and reward yourself for the mental wins that you achieve, because your brain is then reinforced to continue on that system or that process, which will then lead to the physical results. So now that you know what you need to look for in the first few weeks to tell you that you're on the right track and that you're doing a good job, you can also identify what's not working. So let's say, from a very practical standpoint, your schedule for the gym, you've said you're going to go 5 days out of the week, but you work 6 days out of the week. So that's really unrealistic to be going 5 days. So if you find yourself consistently falling short of that 5-day time period and it just doesn't align with your schedule, you can then identify that that's not working. In order to identify what's not working, you just need to keep track of where you're falling short. And we're keeping track of how we're falling short because we have a system set in place. When we don't have systems set in place, our brain will tell us that we're Mr. Consistent, when in reality, we're like 50% consistent. So when you have a system set in place, you can compare the system against what you actually did to track how consistent were you. And then once you find out how consistent you were, you can look at the problems and figure out, okay, why didn't I go on this day? Why didn't I do this? So once you identify what's not working, it'll usually fall into 2 categories or options. 1, a mental problem, or 2, a practical implementation problem. So practical implementation is going to be like scheduling, right? You just realistically don't have time to go 5 days, so you need to go 3 to 4. Or maybe you have a really busy schedule, so you need to go 7 days out of the week, but you need to cut the training time in half to do like 30 minutes or 20 minutes a day instead of doing an hour to 45 minutes or whatever. So those are things that are like practical implementation that can be adjusted with your scheduling. Same thing goes for your nutrition. If you don't have time to prepare 5 meals or eat 5 meals in the day, then you can do 3 larger meals. Now, if it happens to fall into the mentality bucket, this is basically what I would do for my clients. You're going to have to do for yourself, because essentially what I'm doing here is what I do for my clients. I'm trying to give to you so you can pretty much coach yourself through this. What I would do for a client is confront them about the lack of consistency or the lack of adherence, and then discuss it face to face to figure out where their head's at, what the problem is, and then reframe, rewire. And usually after that, they get right back on track real quick. Usually never have to have more than one of those conversations with them, because right off the rip, I'm drilling mindset with them. And there's a standard that they have to uphold if they want to get results. And so when you're doing this with yourself, you're going to have almost a conversation in the mirror. It might be a little harder because it's obviously just you. But if you want it bad enough, you will be able to achieve this. And then after having multiple conversations like that with yourself, you should be good to go and on track and really have your priorities straight. All right, so that pretty much wraps up the first few weeks. Now let's go ahead and get into the first few months. So like I said earlier, the physical changes are a lagging indicator. So you'll see mental changes and mental wins within the first few weeks, and then you'll see physical changes and stuff in the first few months. So when it comes to the first few months, now is when we can look at the changes that people tend to look for way too fucking early. So this is going to be things like the physical changes, right? Do we have more muscular definition? Have we lost a significant amount of fat mass? That's what we need to look for here, not over here. We need to look for it right at this point. So now the data shifts from looking at the mentality. While we still reward the good mental behaviors, now we can look at the physical changes, right? If you're not losing body fat at a consistent rate, you either need to up your cardio or increase your deficit, one or the other. They work in tandem. The deficit will probably do a lot more work than the cardio will, but both of them can be used to your advantage. If your physique is not developing, maybe you're having poor exercise choice, maybe you're not fueling for the gym properly, maybe you're not training effectively, but at least now you've been able to track everything leading you up to this point to figure out what you've done wrong, which can steer you in the direction of doing right. I know a lot of people get overwhelmed by not knowing what the right thing is to do, but if you just keep moving and keep track of everything that you're doing, you'll at least have data on what you've been doing wrong. But half the time you could get it right. Like you could just try and then adjust as you go and then actually make that progress. So when you're at this point, look at your development, consider what you've been doing for the last few months, and then tweak it to get better based on the data that you have at this point. And then next, this kind of goes with what I was already discussing, but identify what's not working. Like I said, if your body fat hasn't dropped or the scale hasn't dropped or you aren't getting stronger or you aren't seeing any more muscular definition, or if your cardiovascular health hasn't improved, then you need to go back and look at what could be going wrong. But the good thing is you have a compilation of data to tell you the answer. The hard part with this stage is that it's where a lot of people that have a lack of knowledge give up because it's so much information and they don't really know what to do with the data. So like for my clients, I would typically handle this for them, but I encourage you to analyze your data and then research and just put in the work to get the results. Because everything that you need to know can be researched and found on studies and online and just through basic searches. It just takes knowledge and your ability to apply it. And then that leads you into adjust, right? So if you haven't lost a considerable amount of body fat, you can then adjust your nutrition or your cardio or your activity levels. If you're not seeing muscular development, you need to either adjust when you train, make sure you're looking at your sleep, maybe restructure the exercise choice. Maybe you're not choosing exercises that are optimal for muscular hypertrophy and you're just doing random bullshit. Or maybe you're prioritizing cardio more than you're prioritizing training, which is never the way to go. But like I said, this is just a way for you to track if things are working or if things are progressing, right? So you have an idea of what to look for at certain points or certain stages and how to kind of get started. But again, the answers to these questions are dependent on the person. The adjustments are also dependent on the person and the problem. And the only way that you're going to figure that out is by taking the data that you've collected over the course of this transformation and then pairing that alongside the science that is available to everyone on the internet, right? And then applying that. But I just wanted to make this quick video for you guys to help you understand if you're progressing or not and how to know if it's working. If you want me to coach you through this to improve your mindset, build your dream physique, and optimize your health, I will leave the application of that in the description of this video. If you're a good fit and I have spots available, I will personally be reaching out to you. If you have any questions, you can drop them in the comments down below or DM me on Instagram and I will get back to you with a voice message. I answer all of my DMs. I will throw a video over here regarding mindsets. If you have any questions or anything about the mental training, I will throw one of my recent videos over here about that. Don't forget to do hard shit, be confident, have the courage to be uncomfortable, but most importantly, don't forget how much I love you guys, how much I'm rooting for y'all, and how much I just want to freaking see you guys win. I love y'all so much. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see y'all in the next video.